So, John, I appreciate you coming on the show, and let's get to know a little bit about you.
All right. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. And
No, I appreciate it. No, but pretty much what this show is, it's to get people that's not into martial arts, maybe sitting there that's afraid of doing it, so they get to learn that maybe somebody wasn't into it when they first started or didn't think martial arts would have been a part of their life, and pretty much that's how it is. So we ask the same three questions no matter who it is: how and why, what's martial arts doing in your life now, and what's your plans for the future. So let's go ahead and get started with question one: how and why did you get into martial arts?
like probably 90% of the people, because I didn't want to get bullied and I was getting bullied. And, I grew up in a rough place and it was a lot of fighting. Um, and I knew at an early age that I needed to learn how to defend myself or protect myself or get in a fight or whatever, however you want to call it, at 9 years old. And so I found, I looked in the phone book. I found a martial arts place I liked the logo on the yellow pages. This was 1970, so there's yellow pages. And I called it and I found out where it was and what time the classes were. Caught the bus down there. It was on 404 P. Koi, right across from the Ala Moana Shopping Center in Honolulu, Hawaii. And I walked in that like 400 or 500 square foot, tiny little room. It was upstairs. It was above a waterbed store, and when they used to have water beds. And I walked in, and there was a heavy bag hanging, two makiwaras, and I walked in, bunch of guys training, black gis, and I knew that first day this would be it for the rest of my life. This was going to be my life. I could tell that minute. And I walked in that gym, 1970, and I was with that instructor, the same instructor, till 2001 when he passed away. And to this day, I'm still training every day. I don't think I've ever missed more than 2 days in a row since 1970, and it's just always been my life.
So
and it protected me from being bullied, let me tell you.
So you grew up in Hawaii, correct?
Yeah, I did.
And what was the style again of what you started? Because I guess if you was with the same sensei up until 2000, then you've never switched styles.
Well, I actually did a lot, and the style was Kaji Kempo, a Hawaiian style, which is very famous now. They call it the original MMA because it was a mixture of judo and jiu-jitsu and Kempo and boxing, and it was a mixture of arts made specifically for the street. Not necessarily to defend your life, but to beat people up in the street because it was a pretty rough place. But I started fighting when I was 14 in like organized fights, like Golden Glove boxing, kickboxing tournaments, karate tournaments. I was doing all that, and I realized that the katas and the forms, we had to do them every day, and I couldn't figure out why. I was trying to figure out how this movement would ever protect me in the street or even in the ring. So I didn't like doing them. So I would tell my instructor, at 13, 14 years old, I say, hey, why am I doing this? Well, what is this going to help? And he used to tell me to shut the F. I'm not going to cuss, but he used to tell me, I swear, I was a kid, and imagine a martial arts instructor doing this now, but he would say, shut the F up. You'll do it till you get your black belt, then you don't have to do it anymore, but you have to do it, until you get your black belt. So I did all those techniques, all the katas, I got my black belt, and I took them out of the curriculum. And when I did that, I knew that I was being disingenuous or I don't know, disloyal, or I wasn't following with the culture of that system. So I couldn't call it Kaju Kempo anymore if I didn't have the same, the same belt system, the same curriculum, because they were heavy into the katas and stuff. Not heavy like some systems, but heavy enough. And so I renamed it Hawaiian Kempo. I went from Kaju Kempo to Hawaiian Kempo. And I started that in 1985, and it's been like that ever since. And my instructor, who was still alive at the time, he gave me his full blessing to do it. He actually liked it better that way, and he loved our system and our style. And then he was around in the beginning of the MMA, and he loved the fact that we were involved in that. And he was very proud of what we had accomplished and how we turned, the system that I learned with him. He was very proud of where it was.
Yeah, that's interesting that you sit there and said that he didn't have a problem with you taking certain things out, because I had Jeff Speakman on, from Kempo 5.0 and whatever different Kempos like 1 through 5, right? And he said that he got a lot of slack from the Kempo community when he started adding different things into it.
Yeah.
So I think it's pretty cool.
I might have Kaju Kempo guys out there who don't like it, but I think they do. I mean, the Kaju Kempo guys I talk to and my instructor, they love what we've done with Hawaiian Kempo. The Ohana, which means family in Hawaiian. We're a big, tight family, Hawaiian Kempo. We got gyms like in Connecticut with Glover Teixeira. We got Chuck Liddell. We got Court McGee. We got Ramsey Nijum. We got, guys that are, that we started, like Tim Kennedy. And so we've done well with the street system that I've created. I created it for the street, but it's translated very well to sport fighting, especially MMA.
No, and that's interesting that you did that. I think it is kind of cool, that you started off with a style that was very heavy into kata, and I was taking Shotokan, and I'm getting ready to go back. Well, excuse me, Shudokan, because it's different from Shotokan. It's an Okinawa based karate, and they're heavy into kata. And I was talking to my sensei, I'm like, what are we supposed to get from doing kata? And I ask, pretty much almost everybody that's on here, what is your views on kata? And I took it, she goes, it's what you want to take from it. And I said, so what? It's kind of like a boxing combination. She goes, or Muay Thai, can you take this and that, like shadow box or use it, what is your view on that? Because you obviously didn't care too much for the kata. So is it something that's like a combination that you can take out of it, or what?
Well, like it's bullshit and or bull blank. Sorry. But it's not like shadow boxing. It's not like practicing moves. Because if you were shadow boxing, say you're a boxer and they wanted you to put your hands like this and punch like this, and then bring your hands open and punch, and then call that shadow boxing. And to me, shadow boxing is freestyle. You're going at your own, you're doing your own thing. You're putting a quick combination together, but you're not memorizing 21 movements to do in any shadow. It would never work that way, because you always have to be ready for what your opponent does. And in a kata, you're not. You got, now I got to go back to kata 4. Oh, because the guy just moved over there, so I got to do another. Katas are very rigid, and shadow boxing is not rigid. You're moving, you're flowing, you're going with it. I love katas. I love to watch them. I think they're beautiful to watch, but I also love to watch pop lock and dancing. And I feel like they're both about as effective for any kind of street or sport fight. There's actually they don't help at all for any kind of street fight or any kind of sport fight, but they're fun to watch. So if you have like a bunch of time to do all these moves because they're fun to watch and they're fun to learn and stuff like that, that's great. But my guys come to me because they want to learn how to fight in the street or in the cage. And some guys like come up, like Lyoto Machida, he does katas, right? And I love Lyoto, we're good friends. But he also grew up, that's all they did, like 8 hours a day, So if you got a lot of spare time, you could throw in some katas. But if you're a hardworking person, you don't have that kind of time, your dad, like Lyoto's dad, owned a karate school. That's what they did. They grew up with that. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, he likes katas, but he grew up with his dad who owns a karate school. That's all they did all day. So if you got a lot of spare time, katas are good. But if you have a short window, a small window where you got to practice because you got a family, you're going to school, you got a job, you just want to learn what's going to be effective in real life situations, then kata you're spending some of your time at kata, that's what you call a waste of time.
Okay, I can understand that. See, what I was sitting there thinking is when I was sit there and was learning katas, I would sit there and say, okay, what if I took just like you would in Muay Thai, you do a cross, a hook into a kick. Now, what I was sitting there kind of saying was, what if you took like one thing from a kata and one thing from a different kata and made a combination like that? Would that kind of help? Or because the next question is I wanted to know how you switched what you learned into where you involved into now. So if you took like one thing from this and one thing from that and worked it into where a drill, would that work?
Drills are great, but you're never gonna, in a real life drill where you're training for a street or the cage, or that's what you're training for. Sport or street.
Okay.
And you're never going to have a movement like this for either. You know what I mean? You're never going to have both your hands up here or here. I mean, there's so many things in a kata that they just do because it looks cool, but it has absolutely no place for the street or sport. So if you take this out of this, when you're shadowboxing and doing combinations, that's one thing. But when you're putting like 22 moves together where it's rigid and you have to go this way, then you have to go this way, it has nothing to do with the street. And what they say is, they use this word bunkai, right? Yep. And I guess that's supposed to mean that you can take anything you want and make it anything else and just say, oh no, but when they're doing this, they're really doing a left hook. And then when they're doing this, they're really doing an effective side hammer blow. And then, but why not just do the hammer blow or the left hook? Why do you have to disguise it as some? I'll tell you why, because the word bunkai is just foolishness. It says you just can fake anything and make it anything else. And I know in today's society, we're doing that with other things too. And I'm not going to go there because I'm not going to turn this political.
Yeah, I got you.
It's bunkai. I mean, that's what you call, it's just bullshit. I mean, it's like bullshit.
I mean, is it, yeah. So, okay, I can see that. So how did you take a style that you learned that way and putting it into the style that you have now?
Okay, number one, Hawaiian Kempo is the toughest form there is of style. Just street fight and the way they trained us. My instructor always talked about animal instinct, pounding on the ground. We did a lot of takedowns, and then we would, do stomps and, stuff like to end the fight. And there was a lot of that translated over when I started fighting. They did hooks and stuff. most karate forms don't do hooks and uppercuts and combinations and leg kicks and stuff like that. So I kept a lot of the stuff. I brought in more stuff, like I became a Golden Glove boxer. So I had a boxing coach, and then I had a kickboxing coach, Muay Thai coach who was, so I brought stuff in, and then I took out the kata. And to replace the kata, I put in conditioning drills where for each belt level, you had to be able to do this and this and this, as opposed to kata number one, kata, so I replaced those things with that. And so I took what I thought out of the Kata Kempo. I kept the culture. We had a lot of family feel, a lot of toughness, but a lot of togetherness. Never start to fight, but always throw the first punch. That kind of attitude. And
that's what my mother said all the time. She goes, "Never start the fight, but make sure you get that first punch."
Yeah, when you tell people that, like parents, when we have so many kids now. We started 3 years old at our gym. And sometimes when parents come in, they've always taught their kids, never throw the first punch. And now I'm telling them, always throw the first punch. So we can't even go to schools now and teach self-defense because the teachers don't like to hear me saying, always throw the first punch.
Really?
So, yeah, so that was kind of what we took out of our system. And I kind of changed it from there. I kept the culture, the toughness, the hardcore fighting. I threw in a lot of conditioning drills. I threw in a lot more. And then when the MMA started getting more popular, because this is way back in the 80s, I started this. Now MMA comes in late 90s, early 2000s, and I start getting connected with that. And now next thing you know, I'm hobnobbing with the best jiu-jitsu guys and wrestlers in the world, like Matt Lilland and Sammy Henson and Liborio and Cesar Gracie. So I started training with them, Mario Sperry. So I started training with them. They want to learn some more hooks and some of my punches. I said, okay, well, I want to learn more, escape from the bottom, escape from the mount, takedown defense for the wrestling guys. So I started putting some of their stuff, like that I'm learning there, into the curriculum. And I'm sure they're learning some of my stuff and putting in their curriculum because they're training MMA now, right? Matt Lindland won the silver medal in the Olympics, but he also fought for the world title in the UFC. Sammy Henson won the silver medal in the Olympics freestyle wrestling, but he trains MMA fighters too. So they wanted to take some of my stuff. So I said, all right, I want some of your stuff. So I started bringing in more of that stuff. Then I got Chuck and Glover, top of the food chain, jiu-jitsu, Chuck, great wrestler. So I started bringing that into the system. And Hawaiian Kempo now is just, you can't even tell what we do more because half my fighters like the ground more, half of them like standing more. So we're not a stand-up martial art like we used to be. We're a martial art.
So, that's interesting that you sat there and said that you're bringing in different things. So pretty much, let me get this right, with your style that you learned from the beginning in the 70s until where you moved it into yourself, you kept the culture of that style, but you changed it more for, even though that you said that it was for the streets before, you kind of even made it more for the streets, and then you evolved into like MMA and things like that.
Hawaiian Kempo is for the street, period. Okay. So, but that translates very well into MMA because there's not that much difference in the training. Okay. There isn't. And the way you train an MMA fighter for a fight, and I've done that, is the same in a lot of ways as I train my street guys, like my cops and stuff like that. So it's almost exactly the same. The main difference is the end goal. The end goal of my street guys is to go home safe to the family. The end goal of my MMA guys is to win a UFC title. And the difference in the techniques is very little. You want to slam them on the ground in both. You want to try to knock them out with both. There's some eye attacks, which I don't, are for the street only. There's some other, and then there's some jujitsu techniques, which are only for MMA, which I would not expect anyone to use in the street. So there's like maybe 5 or 6 techniques that don't translate over.
Yeah.
But the hardcore training, a street fight is very, very similar to an MMA fight, in the techniques that we're using, right? Yep. So that's how I do that. Hawaiian Kempo is for the street, and then my fight team, my MMA fight team, that's on the side. They don't, I teach them, we train a little differently. It's a different culture with the fighters versus the street guys. But a lot of them are like this, like Chuck's a black belt, Glove's a black belt, Court's a black belt, Ramsey's a black belt in Hawaiian Kempo, so they can teach Hawaiian Kempo, but they also do pretty well in the cage, and they can take away some of the things for the street and use it in the cage, right? Yeah. And then if a street fight came up, they're gonna change a couple things and make it effective for the street. That's all.
Yeah. No, and that does make sense. Everybody sits there and says, you'll see this with certain styles sometimes. Oh, it's, you can't use it in the cage because it's too dangerous. But I'm sitting there thinking, if you know how to go hardcore, you also know how to draw back, right? So, all you have to do is just follow the rules. When it goes into cage fighting, no eye gouging, okay. No biting, okay. No groin strikes, all right. No straight punches to the throat, okay. So just take those.
I mean, yeah, there's really not that many except for the eye pokes and the groin shots, which aren't a big deal for groin shots. To me, are way overrated in self-defense. But I mean, they're still there, but it's very simple. The eye gouging, the biting and stuff. Yeah, those are a couple things you'll take out. And then in the street fight, I'm not going to have my guy on top, and then all of a sudden he's going to fall back for an armbar in a street fight. So there's certain things that they know for both. But guess what? A slam is going to be effective in both, and so is a left hook.
A left hook's a left hook, no matter if it's MMA or street, right? And a slam, right. Like you said, a slam's a slam.
A slam.
So it's funny that you brought that up, that you teach, ground fighting for MMA, but you don't really consider it being a good self-defense, because that's also one of the biggest things that I actually take martial arts for now is for self-defense. And I have my daughter into, Muay Thai, where they also teach MMA too. So they throw in some, ground stuff like that, but you really wouldn't want to use any kind of really like ground fighting in a street fight because you don't want to go. Yeah.
No, we go to the ground all day long. I think the ground's great, but I'm not just like I do stand up, but I don't do eye gouging in the street for my MMA guys, right? But I teach ground for my street guys. We just don't do certain techniques. Like I'm not gonna fall off of a mount to get an armbar. I'll get a mount, and we do a lot of takedowns and takedown defense. We learn mount escape. If somebody gets on top of us, we want to learn how to get out of the mount.
Yeah.
But I don't want to do positions where you're going to get into a worse position for the street, like falling off. If you're mounted, I would never expect you to go out of the mount onto your back to try to get an armbar in the street where there's so many other things you can end the fight quicker with. Yeah. Right? I'm not saying, I'll be boring all day long. I'll do, all kind of chokes, but there's certain things like clenching. You don't want to do an under, clench for the street if the guy's arms are above. You got the underhooks. Yeah. Underhooks are great for MMA, but they're not too good for the street if somebody's like gouging your eyes because you're trying to get a body lock. So there's differences. there's differences that I teach for both. And if you can get him down real quick with a body lock, that's great. But if he pops his hips back a little bit, now you're not on the ground, he's not on the ground. Next thing you know, his thumb's in your freaking eye, or he just stabbed you 18 times with a knife that he took out of his waist. then
Yeah.
that's not too smart, right? You'd rather stay away and punch or get a body lock real quick or a slam, as long as it's done exponentially quick.
So you're talking about using ground fighting properly in the way that it should be used, because once again, if you get down on the ground in a cage fight, UFC or whatever, yeah, you're not worrying about somebody, sticking their fingers in your eyes and
Right.
pulling a
Or
knife out.
biting you, or
Yeah.
or pulling a knife out or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's a whole different thing once it hits the ground and you're on the mat. So the
Very
street
true.
with the concrete getting slammed, it's a whole different thing. So it's to be treated and taught differently. But I'll never say don't learn street ground for the street. Probably a third of our techniques are street ground related, grappling related.
Yeah, because you have to know what to do if somebody does. What if somebody does slam you on the ground? Now you have to know how to get out of that.
Or you won't get out of it because it hits your head. Now you're in a nursing home 6 months later, and you're in a coma. You'll never wake up completely because you have a tracheostomy and a feeding tube. So you don't want to hit your head on the ground. Our main thing is defend against, because our number one goal in life, in a street fight, is to stay conscious. Once you lose your consciousness, you're dead. So getting slammed, you'll lose your consciousness. We spend so much time defending body locks front and back in the street because that's the number one way you're going to get slammed, is with a body lock. We also teach the double leg tackles and takedowns and stuff. So we spend a lot of time on that because hitting your head on the ground is going to end the fight, because the referee will stop it in the cage. But if you get knocked out in the street, they're just going to keep soccer kicking your head until you're going to be drooling for the rest of your life, right? How long do you think your wife's going to wait for you if you end up in a nursing home? You think she's going to come turn? You think she's going to go turn you every day and she's going to take good care of you because you're her man?
No, my wife's a terrible nurturer. She'll even say that. She goes, "Listen, I'll pay somebody to do it for you." She goes, "But I am not a nurturer. Like if I'm sick, she's like." So let me ask you this: your whole style really is, take away the MMA, take away all the training for UFC. Your style is 100% for self-defense.
That's the end goal, but there's a lot of other things: conditioning, fitness, health. But our goal is to go home to your family if you're attacked. That's it. Don't let anyone take our lunch money. That's the main thing. But
I love that saying.
Along with that, we're going to get healthier and happier. We're going to look better at the beach, right? And we're gonna be more dynamic as a person because we're in better shape and we're confident. So that all comes along with it. But the main thing that gets you there is, our main goal is to go home and don't let anyone take our lunch money. That's it.